Do do do. Oh my goodness. I'm. Am I ready for my close up? This is Norma Desmond coming to you from Key West, Florida. What's going on, you guys? Birdie Bird, I love you. Think you're the best. There's no hurry for you to come over on this other side because we can still learn a lot more. One of the reasons, perhaps, why I didn't bring the Kundalini up, basically, we are following the code, which is the Kundalini. 1 through 9 is basically, you know, entraps the 1 through 7. That's the Kundalini, and then 8 and 9. Eight is the banquet that you have afterwards, and this control. And 9 is the new you, the new consciousness. So a lot of times I don't have to really say anything, but when someone says they're planting a vineyard, he went out and planted a vineyard. This is this idea of sowing a seed that allows this child to be born within you, this growth, this new growth. So the other thing is he made an altar towards the Lord, or to the Lord, in this place. Because the way it works is that no matter where the carcass lands, the eagles will come to you. So it means any place that you do this connection, this communication with the Lord. And remember, basically, it's the first time that someone comes back, and after that you're connected forever. And so the idea is just to keep coming back to revisit, to get your new, plants need water and every day. And water in this sense is the truth. And they make lots of references to this idea of the outside world being, a lie, and that it's dry, which means it's a lie. And that where you were going to go to get quenched of your thirst and never thirst again was to drink from this well that Jesus lets you drink from. So this is something that's found deep inside of us, and earth is just another word, or is what they call the lower mind. This is earth, all right, and heaven is the higher mind. And so what you find in there is that this is this idea of where the flat earthers get their idea that they're describing actually earth. So I would say that I think earth looks like a brain, all right, and it's got to look like a half of a brain, because the Bible is really only talking about the lower conscious when it talks about earth. But in the science of things, it's earth, outside earth, and our earth, our left mind. They run off the same frequency of beta conscious. That's why beta, or beta frequency. That's why, with these people that are in the Mandela effect and stuff like that, their bodies can change, and this can change the outside world. Physical things can change. But, they can keep track of it because it's the mental side of us that's in a higher frequency that doesn't change and is not affected by this lower conscious vibration. So it's able to remember stuff. That's the whole point of coming to Earth, is to, to grow and to learn something. And one of the reasons why people come to God, or to go to the Lord, or into religion, is because they want to share this wonderful experience, or to blame it on someone, whether it was the good things or the bad things. But it just seems as if they said that, if there really wasn't a God, what would they do? They would invent one? Well, all these inventions and things are only taking you away from the real God. But it says that the further you get away, and you have to understand this by the stories of Moses, where the Lord would say, go to Pharaoh and tell him you want this. All right. And then Moses would go to Pharaoh and ask this, or demand it. Pharaoh would say yes. And then the Lord would harden Pharaoh's heart and, recant. So, it was Lord that did all of this. He was playing this like, I want you to really, when you finally make it over to this other place, I want you to have gone through hell first. And so, all these pestilence and all these things, he hit them with five, I think five different things. Maybe there were seven. But you're talking about, a thorough cleansing of the body. That's what they're doing in these situations. And so it's really not a negative thing to go through the end of time. We find that the end of times is when you've had enough. And you learn to sow this seed that grows this vine, which represents the story of the servant that kept his head, whereas the baker lost his head. Baker is about thoughts, bread is about thoughts. And his dream of his thoughts being scattered because the fowls of the air came, caught him, and run off with him. That's the symbology behind that story. Whereas the servant of the Lord, the cupbearer, the servant, he winds up dreaming of a vine that grows out of earth that then fruits, you know, and uh, uh, and that he squeezed what was inside the grape, squeezed this is the great wrath, the wine press, that squeezes the outside of you, and the inside of you pops out, and you serve this to the Lord. This is this whole idea about, getting rid of the skin, coming out of the skin, renting, our garments, and tossing our garments. These ideas of washing your face and taking off your shoes because this is holy place. God is spirit, and he says that in order for you to come and see him, you have to be in spirit too. So, if you think you have to be dead, but this is how it works, That's why God doesn't really talk to people. If you heard George Bush said that God talks to him, it can't. It can't. That's not how it works. The Bible tells you this, and you can see that it just doesn't work with the information that they give you. And if he did, he wouldn't say, "Hey, George, what's going on?" You know, it would be some kind of symbolic language because, they only speak that way. They're in spirit. They don't speak like us. We're in physical form. And so, you'll find that Joseph and Caleb and Moses and Aaron, these are all coming in pairs, Simon. And it's just the idea that this is the pairs. These are the two. One's the meat of you, and one is the spirit of you. All right, but they're all, it's all you. It's all you. None of these people are alive. So, the Kundalini runs through and through all these stories, regardless whether or not I say them or not. You just have to understand them. They speak so many times, they keep repeating themselves. Even a grasshopper, taken out of context, we look really small. But if you read all the other stories that have grasshopper in there, it's talking about the multitude. It's talking about you. It's talking about five. It shows up in these areas where, there's a great multitude. Look, grasshoppers, there's a lot of them. But this idea is that the stories are really only talking about you. And this is where I get kind of mixed up sometimes. I think they're talking about the mess of us, like whenever those guys came into the wedding, he sent his servants. This is really you sending your servants to go and find these guys. And what does he do? When he comes in, he says, he looks and he finds this one guy who's, didn't wear his wedding garment, And when he asked him this, he said, friend. And the guy was speechless. So, like a lamb before shear, it's mute. It doesn't say anything. This is the same story. It's the same type of symbolism. It's a different story that it revolves or evolves into the same way, you know. And so, like when Jesus came up and hit, this idea of the tree, this bush, he came up to it. He was hungry. They mentioned it. He woke up early in the morning. He was hungry, and he came upon this tree, and he didn't have any fruit on it. So, bomb, gone. That's the whole point of that whole story was, we're getting rid of the old, the bad, and we're going to bring in the new. And of course, this is the way it is. All he's doing along this line is he's making it to Jerusalem. He keeps slapping all these Pharisees. He says religion, this religious thing. So it's really, what do you mean? You could say it could be the outside world, but they're really only talking about you. And you are governed more from the outside. You're governed what someone says from the, I basically kind of keep what I do kind of secret at work. But if I did, I would start telling things and start showing up. I can just tell. So this is one of those things that just in my not used to just blurting out my work. Because it's kind of scary to some people. How is this guy from Nazareth? So this guy from the Ozark Mountains talking all this shit, And, in the story of Buddha being persuaded by the devil not to go this way, what do you think? Sitting underneath this tree in this meditation, do you think that the answers are just going to fall in your lap like a ripe fig, So this fig is this idea of blooming from the inside. And so, there's the idea that a little bug or something usually has to go into this into this fruit. And as it goes in, it loses its wings. It's beautiful. It's kind of the opposite of us. Whenever we go inside, we actually gain our wings, all right, and feathers. But it's the symbology behind all these stories that link us right to this kundalini. And that's the fruit on the vine or the tree, that we go for our meat. And when he wants it to bear fruit, is he wants that you planted the seed correctly, that you built this altar to the Lord correctly. And it's within you. It's in you. It's not what's on the outside. It has nothing to do with churches and all that stuff. But this is what people have made it out to be because of the shallowness of things. And we find that they're just blind and they can't hear it. And I couldn't do it either. I didn't go any further. And even when I did know the symbolism behind it, I would read the Bible and literally fall asleep because it's just so hard to read. And it just didn't make any sense to me. And so a lot of places I skipped right over. So these things that I'm reading to you, they're like the first times I've ever really read them outside of like church where we only were given a sentence, and that's it, the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God, So anyways, that's what we're only talking about here is reading the Bible through the Spirit. The Spirit means what you don't see. And of course, what we're talking about, I never heard that. This is the first time I ever heard this. Well, it's also the first time, if you could even see it, that you would understand that, people's names, like Isaac, meaning laughter, that Zipporah, meaning bird, all of these things. This is the dark side, the hidden side, the occult message. Means it's just hidden. And it's the outside world that scares you from all these things. You're sent to your single eye. Jesus tells you if your eye is single, your body fills with light. This is the opening of the sixth chakra, and then as far as that goes, sparking open this crown, the crown chakra. God gives us our crown once we make it up to this particular place. It's less traveled. But yet, the Christians still want to be with the billions of other people following the word, following the letter, instead of the very few that actually are following the Spirit, you know. And the reason why they say that the letter kills is because it does. If you believe in the letter, then you are a particularly spiritually dead person because you have tossed your silver, which is that part of you that actually connects to the Lord. It's electrical, silver to gold, that you've taken this and you've given it to an alternate place. And no matter how it is that it came about to you through tradition, through family, or you had a near death experience and now you believe in Jesus and stuff like that, you found yourself down and out. Now this is your way out, or you're a righteous motherfucker and you use this as your shield against them. God doesn't just, the way it works, it doesn't just come to anybody. In that story, many are called and few are chosen. From the very beginning of that parable that he was talking about, the very beginning, he says, it was like a father who made a marriage for his son. So this is the father, which would be you, making this marriage, wanting this marriage to come to life, and only finding out that nobody wants to come. That the whole group of people, which would be representing the skin, which is not worthy, right? The skin is never worthy, you know. So what you find, why am I having to put up with that bad bunch of, the congregation? Why do I have to put up? That's the congregation is your skin, the brethren, the disciples, the skin, the 12 disciples. Just like in the Old Testament, the 12 disciples wind up being the zodiac, all right? And so you have the same thing with Jesus and his group. It's just another group of these guys, that represent the skin from the head down to the feet. And so, and two of those guys, we know that whoever winds up on 3 and whoever winds up on 6, this is where Joseph and Caleb wind up in the story, all right, in the old story. So, I can come up with this one here, and I bet it becomes Simon, someone else, because Simon is the stone, So, or Peter. Peter winds up being the stone, but it's Peter, Simon, it's kind of mixed up little thing going on. But anyhow, all these stories are really all representing this, the word, the word that we are looking at as the letter winds up being part of the works that you have to have learned that even through this, that you love Jesus and love God, and even through all this noise, you really wanted to meet him, you want to be a part of him, you've cried with him, you've loved him, you've done all these things, you've given yourself up for this guy, for this story. Then only then, because he's truly, this has to happen before the end of times comes. Truly, these earthquakes in various places and all these things have to come before the end of times. And they're not talking about what's going on in the outside world. They're talking about what goes on inside of you. So you have to go through this suffering in order to get to this particular point. Which way doesn't mean it's going to give it to you. Because a lot of us just find dissatisfaction going to the mankind out into the world, where we have to go to 5,000 different religions to find the one that we want. This is the way the stories go. It's looking for salvation, and to be a Buddhist, he tried this. He was born into the rich world. That didn't do it for him. He gave his everything up, went to the poor world, about died, starvation. That didn't work for him neither. So what he learned that he had to just sit still, quiet. In the midst of all of the craziness of the world, and sit down, be quiet, in order, while in a physical, mental change of mind. This is how you get this enlightenment. What does it do for you? It just changes the vibration of you, but otherwise, you're the same guy. I'm still hungry. They said I would be thirsty. I have the truth. The truth is about water. Truth. I just absolutely bathe in water. And with the elephant spout. Truth. And whether or not you believe it or not, truth is empowering, but it's also really scary because some people just don't want to know the truth. And there's a lot of, if you know this, won't you tell everyone? Well, I try to tell people, but, I only get a few people to listen. The other half can only hear this, the adult peanut game. That's the only thing they can hear. So, I'm up against God's uh, slumber that he has put on people to this day regarding Scripture that causes the Gospels to become a snare. And that this plate that you feed off of, is going to, make you sick. And he wants this to happen. Just like in the story with Moses and Job, this let's let him have, he'll be restored in the end. He'll be restored back to his best in the end. But it's also this pact that you had made with the Lord sometime, whenever it was, that you were to be separated from him and allow the separation so that you could grow your hair long like Samson, right? Being this Nazarene who is not allowed to drink wine, is not allowed to have any relations with this higher conscious at all in its life ever, until the end times when he gets tricked and he finds that, oh my God, it was in me all the time. And then once he gets his hair cut, he's allowed to drink the wine and he's allowed to do all this stuff. So, we're a good number of people out here just out here growing our hairs, living life. That's what our soul is meant to do. So, mine's over. Not over, but the dead part's gone. And that's one of probably the coolest things. That you can't really tell that we're dead in the first place. But I have sought so long to find this place. I have worked so hard and cried. I have done these times. I have put in the works. Now I learned how to sow the seed because it showed me how to read the Bible, and it gave me that first 1, 2, 3 that I could see it in writing, and I could hear it when I read it, when it's read, and I understand it in my heart. Those are the 3 things that get you started, on how to plant that seed. And once you get that seed going, this is building that altar to the Lord. And, I can't think of anything cooler on earth. All my hair is all standing up on end. That's the coolest part, is that you actually did it. You actually find this place. It's the coolest place. And only because I just know it. I just know it. I feel it in my bones. All right? And bones of bones. Remember, this is how the spirit is brought out of Adam. This is how he gets his wife. This is where she's pulled from his bones. All right? It's beautiful. The bone is what's between the flesh and the spirit. It's what holds everything together. It's just beautiful, you guys. Tomorrow, got another lesson. Maybe later today. I got to go help my friend move some more. She's an old gal. She needs help. And even though I got tons of work to do, I'm gonna just let it happen. You have to let it flow. Anyways, best to you guys. Better life through symbolism.